Simon O'Connor.
Mr Speaker, I'm pleased to speak to this parental leave and employment protection, 6 months paid leave and work contact hours amendment bill in its first reading. I think for many of us there's a sense of déjà vu, if you will, that we're debating this again in the House. And for me, once again, oppose this bill. Sentiments might be noble, but I don't believe them to be correct for 3 reasons. One would be that I would term practical, one prudent, and the third one being philosophical. The first reason is practical, and that's really in relation to what the government or governments have already done. So we've had paid parental leave at 16 weeks, and in the recent budgets of the government, we have extended this out a further 2 weeks to 18 weeks of paid parental leave, which is beginning from the 1st of April next year. So practically speaking, the government is making steps and continues to make steps in this regard. We've also heard from others, Mr Speaker, around how this government, and it reflects a National Party philosophy of not just doing a broad brushstroke for the sake of sort of symbolic semblance and niceties, but actually trying to target this more appropriately. And so we were very pleased in some of our changes to look at how we provide this paid parental leave, not just to the birth parents, but where situations require it to those got to get the terms right here, those who are home for life carers.
I apologise to the member. Thank you. Simon O'Connor.
Thank you. Those who are home for life carers, fungi parents, grandparents, importantly, I know within my own electorate a number of grandparents are looking after children, and those who are permanent guardians, and I think it's important and has been important practically to put those supports in place. Others have mentioned it too. I think it is very prudent around extending or providing an extension of paid parental leave for those whose babies are premature. So those coming to birth under the datum of 37 weeks. I think it's a small but practicable step. It's one that certainly sits logically in my mind, and I'll touch on that a little bit when I talk around the philosophical concerns that I have in and around all of this. The second issue I raised or hinted at was around the prudency of this. A government's responsibility is to all its citizens, young, old, middle-aged, and I think it's prudent of the government to approach this carefully because every new idea, no matter if it has merit or not, has costs, and we have to figure that out. The best cost that I've been given, and excuse me having to read this, I can't recall all the numbers, but it's going to cost something like $378 million over the next 4 years, and an ongoing cost of about $126 million. Look, in terms of the government's books, that's not a huge amount of money when one weighs it up. But at the same time, it's all about trying to make the balances and the choices that are required. It's very easy for members to come to the House and say, oh, it's just going to cost this much, it's just going to cost that much. We have to work that out, and again, as a government, to be prudent. And I think we've heard from government ministers in particular in other discussions that, of course, we will look at if we can extend this as time and prudency allows. Because I can see there's been a hashtag going around or the like about sort of 8 more weeks and so forth, and that's fine. One can argue that point, but of course, with the debates or how we've heard the debate structured from the other side, there'll always be a call for 8 more weeks. Finally, Mr Speaker, for me, I've got some, I suppose, philosophical concerns with this. I know time is now short. One part of it is that having a child is generally not an accident, a mistake and so forth. It's something that is fairly normal. And to the extent that the Crown or the state needs to, I'm sure there's plenty of exceptions which may disprove the rule, but by and large a social state, a responsible state, steps in those unusual circumstances. The other two is we often hear, and it's from all sides of the House, it's all about community we hear in this point. You know, it takes a community to raise a child. It seems that that's pulled out as an excuse when money is required, but it's funny in so many areas when the community wants to set its standards and ideals for how to raise a child, you know, keep out of my life, don't bother me. And so I see a bit of an inconsistency of thinking here that if it's truly a community raising a child, then we as a community have a responsibility more than just money to our children.